So this is a place I come to quite often. There was a time when I was walking over here almost every day, and a big part of what I did while I was here was my photography. Some of it was stuff that really excited me. An awful lot of it was mundane, but it was a good place for me to practice, try things out, and experiment a little bit from time to time. And there was very little investment in terms of time, because I was coming over for the exercise and the fresh air anyway. Last year, 2024, I got out of the habit of that, but I didn't spend as much time getting out in the mornings. It was typically a morning thing. But going back for 5 or 6 years before that, if you followed me on Instagram, you'll have seen a lot of this place. So we're just starting 2025 now. We're coming up to halfway through January, and I promised myself that I'd get back into the habit of walking over here as often as I could, almost daily. And I've made a good start so far. I've been out quite a bit this week, and it's been cold. Ice has been a feature of the photography that I've done this week, and I've been shooting on iPhone and on my baby camera, my Canon M50, which just goes in the pocket. And that's been a big help, actually, having the M50, because it's something I can just pick up and go at a moment's notice. I don't have to think too much about it. It's been a pretty cold week, made it very atmospheric. It's a funny thing about Mother Nature that the most interesting scenery that you can have tends to be the most extreme weather conditions, whether that's wind, rain, snow or ice. Far more interesting than a warm spring day. But definitely pays off when you get out. So done some photography on my iPhone this week, and I'm going to put some of the pictures up within this video. One of the shots that I took was a panoramic on the iPhone, and as is often the way with sunrise photography, the outcome of the picture was a bit disappointing compared to the reality. So I did some edits, and I've got some screenshots of those edits. So if you're interested to see how I brought that back to something approaching what I actually saw versus what the iPhone saw, I'll pop those edits on at the end of this video. The other shots I've got, I'll add some of those on for you to have a look at and see what you think of how I'm getting on. This morning, walked a bit. The sunlight has been spectacular, and there's been a little bit of light mist, and it's been really nice to be here. So I'm just going to have a look at some of those shots on the back of my camera now. Really, it was just one scene that I got into, and that was just as I set off about 10-15 minutes into the walk. It was just really speaking to me, and so I shot several frames, and what I was really interested in getting, and I'm just having a look now, was the way the sunlight was splaying through the trees and creating some wonderful shadows on the ground. That one's a bit at an angle. I don't quite know how I did that. And the challenge for me was the fact that shooting straight into the sun, the sky was completely blown out, and so I'm looking at these pictures now, more than happy with the sky to be blown out. To be honest with you, I think they are the better pictures. So I'm looking at image 72 versus image 73. So image 73, I was reducing the exposure down, trying to bring the sky back to see if was going to look any better, but really I think I'm quite happy with image 72, that where the sky is blown out, and going on from there, image 74, even more blown out. 75 is very skew-if. 76, 77, very nice. And probably, or I don't know, 78, I think 78, all of these are in portrait mode, but 78, I think I've just cut it too much at the bottom of the frame and lost the shadows, which was what I was really after. So I think 73, am I right? No, 74 and 72 are probably the pick of the shots that I got this morning. So that's quite enough chat from me this morning. I've got a lot more to tell you about with my photography this year. I've got some things that for me are quite exciting planned, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you as time goes on. If you've made it to the end of this video and my mumbling and rambling, thanks very much. I'm going to put the edits up now, and hope you enjoy or you find those useful in some way if you like to shoot on iPhone. And I look forward to giving you an update on my photography in the next video. Bye for now. This shot was taken about 20 minutes before the sun came over the horizon, at about 10 to 8 in the morning. As you can see from the picture, it's very blue, as it would have been in the woods and really with the prevailing light at that time of the day. But what I'd hoped for was to capture some of the colours that were in the sky, and I could have done that had I reduced the exposure on the iPhone. However, that would have left the foreground in darkness and would have been hard to recover it and get that the crisp feeling that I was looking for. So the other thing to say here is that I shot it as a panoramic rather than just using the straight wide angle lens, very, very close to that lump of ice you can see on the bottom left under the text. You'll see that in all its glory, obviously, as the edit progresses. The other thing to say about the edits is that when you see the slides, they've all been copied after the edit was completed. So you will actually see a thumbnail of the completed edit in the slides as we go along. So let's crack on. So on this first slide, what I've done is increase the contrast of the picture overall by dragging the highlight point to the left at the top of the tone curve. Now you can't see the effect of doing this on the finished slide behind, and although you might think that was preferable, it's important to stress that whenever I edit, it's not linear. I don't start in one place and work through a series of adjustments. I will go back to adjustments once I've generally started to shape things up. So although this is where the tone curve finished up, this wasn't where it was at the very beginning of the process. So now I'm moving on to the light panel, and the first thing I'm doing is reducing the exposure. This has the effect of bringing some of the colours back into the sky, and then pulling the contrast back up or up. That again enhances the colours and adds to some of the impact of the scene. And then the last step is to raise the blacks and bring some of the foreground back that would otherwise be in solid shadow. So into the colour adjustments, and the next step for me is just to bring the temperature of the picture up a little bit, just a little bit. I find it's easy to overdo it with this slider. And then lowering the vibrance takes some more blue out of the overall picture, and then boosting the saturation. And I've boosted that quite a bit. People will tell you not to overdo the saturation, and they're right, but you can judge for yourself how well it's worked in this picture. Now I'm into the colour mix panel of the colour panel itself, And the first thing to do is just to nudge the yellows more towards orange. Onto the blue button and reducing the saturation in the blues and brightening them up on the luminance. Now moving on to some local adjustments, and the first one is a linear gradient, which this first one is a solid gradient right across the whole picture, and this allows me to change the hue of the picture just very slightly. You'll see that I've moved it to -7.1, and there's no hard and fast rule for what you can or can't do here. It's really just an adjustment to taste if you want it at all. I like it because it just changes the hues subtly in the direction that I feel I want to take them. The other thing I've done here is to increase the saturation. And you might ask, well, why have you done it here when you could just do it as easily in the on the saturation slider in the color panel? Well, this has a slightly different effect. It's not quite so intense, and so I've chosen to do it here. And now a second linear gradient. You can only see one of the gradients on the slide because it's the one that's selected. This one is just halfway across the screen or across the image from the bottom up, just covering the foreground, which is really where the story of the picture is, with the ice and the reflection. And the first thing I've done is to massively increase the whites, trying to enhance that icy feeling, the whiteness and the brightness that was in the ice and the reflection. And then the next stage is just to punch that up a little further, is to increase the clarity. And then finally, add some more warmth back into it by increasing the white balance towards yellow, the effect of increasing the whites having washed out a little of the colour that I was looking for in the foreground. And so that completes the edit. And here's the final result, bringing up some of the colours that were in the sky as I saw them and getting those colours into the reflection and onto that ice, particularly that large chunk of ice in the lower left of the frame, whilst maintaining some of the intensity, the deeper shadows in the trees, which are facing away from the light, but you can still see some detail in the foreground and in the leaves on the ground. I hope you found that useful in some way and you've picked up something from it. Any comments or thoughts on both the process and the presentation? I'm learning this and learning how to explain what I'm doing, so I'll be glad of any feedback at all. Thanks very much.